January Journal 2021. Log entry day 7. Gratitude. I don't have will or energy to record anything, but I'm here doing it because I thought I was gonna fail by day 4 or 3, and yet it's day 7 and here I am. I'm very thankful for my stamina and for my determination to make a concrete change this 2021. I'm grateful for my friends and the people who still want to keep contact with me. It's never taken for granted. Thank you so much for being a friend. Thank you so much for being here and for keeping contact with me. It is good to have this illusion of company despite being miles away. I will always be thankful for that. I woke up hungry and I had something for breakfast. I'm thankful for that. Because if I woke up hungry and I didn't have any food, well, maybe this recording wouldn't happen. But it is happening, so it means I've got some food. And I'm thankful. Yesterday the piece of flash fiction was finished and I shared it with some people and the feedback was positive. So this has potential. I will keep on polishing the piece until it's the best it can be. I'm glad that I'm still able to write new things instead of just editing my old work. How did I plot my novel? I'm documenting where I stand and where I am at the moment with this novel, and this was my first novel in English. When I was planning before drafting, I didn't know what to do. I tried to create my own outline, and I was so focused on condensing this into one book. I realized I couldn't. It was terrible. It was so flat, it lacked a lot of detail because I was trying to cram almost 15 years of story into a standalone. I cannot do this. So I decided I need better teaching. I went and looked for tutorials of how to create your outline. Again, I failed because most of those tutorials were for single POV outlines, and here I was with more than one character's POV. Since the beginning I knew that it had to be both characters. I couldn't have a story without either of them, because then it would seem that the other character is making stuff up in their imagination just to fill in the void of solitude. And I don't want that to be a theory later, because it's not. So what did I do? Well, I was on my own basically, and I had to guess and figure it out on my own. The first step was open a Word document. Yes, I use Microsoft Word and I use it on my tablet or the laptop now that I had figured it out. I will talk about all this tomorrow, hopefully. So I opened a Word document and I started writing each chapter. Chapter 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. To whom it might belong, though it could be switched around in the future, hopefully. If I do this correctly, I need to move things around, maybe. And it could be done because each chapter is focused on a character's timeline. So if I need to switch them around because the structure isn't right, I can do it. I think it's not so easy to do that when you're writing a single POV, because you would have to stitch some of the scenes, like, oh, well, now I moved to this scene a couple of chapters back and that doesn't make sense, so I have to stitch it up with whatever I had before and after. With multi-POV, this is not happening so much to me. In some parts it is because of narration purposes and I have to stitch it up, but it's not likely. Now I'm talking about how did I plot this, not how am I fixing it later. I am losing focus today. So, chapter title, to whom it belongs, and the date. This story alone takes up 5 years of life story from these characters. So date is important to keep me organized, and maybe I should add the date to the novel itself. I don't know yet. We'll see. Once I was done with each of the chapters, and that took me 2 months of outlining because I didn't know, I mean on and off, I was not just sitting on my desk every day trying to outline. That was not, no, I had other things in my life back then. But it took 2 months to get the whole outline with each chapter, to whom it belongs, the dates, and what happens, like a short summary of this scene, then that, then this happens, and then this character goes here and this character goes there. Very simple, bullet points, nothing special. Once I had that done, I wanted to see if one character or another was taking more page time, and I needed to balance it out. So what did I do? Well, I color-coded each chapter title with character and date. So the top of the chapter outline, I color-coded them. And then at the end of the document, I made a graph with 2 squares and a circle. The circle was blue and the squares had the colors that I assigned to each character. Then inside each square, I wrote the numbers of the chapters. Chapter 1, chapter 3, chapter 5, 4, 6, whatever, to each square, to whom it belongs. And then I just counted them. The circle was for overlapping chapters. This graph gave me a bird's eye view of the whole outline without me going back and forth, because dull blind, so I needed something more concrete and one page, so I could look at the numbers, count them, and decide, yeah, I think this is fair. They have equal page time. And oh yeah, the overlapping chapters are at important sections of the novel, like the beginning, near the climax, blah blah blah. And so I had my outline and I could start drafting. I still had no idea if what I did was right or wrong, because I was basically doing it all on my own. Back then, I did not know many people in the writing community, much less people making videos about writing, and the only people that I saw making videos about writing were the big tubers, you know, Jenna Moresi, Alexa Don, the big ones, and they are very focused on single POV stories, and so I was very alone. I still don't see much talk about multi-POV, which I would love to see someone else talking about how to outline a book in multi-POV, because maybe what I'm doing is completely wrong. Who knows? But it worked for me, it worked for this book, it had some coherence, so I went with it, and I began my draft. And I finished the draft with some hiccups, of course, but in 5 months-ish. So it took 5 months to write this multi-POV draft. And during my editing phase, I have been focusing a lot on the first chapter, because the first chapter was a disaster. I will talk about that later as well, don't lose focus. But most of the structure was working according to feedback, so apparently I did something right. What would be my answer then to this question of how did I plot my novel? Well, I used common sense, and I got to know my characters well, and I got to think deeply about each and every plot point that I was including. So I was not being very self-indulgent. I was with minor aspects but not plot points, and I was very methodic on, okay, this has to go here because if I already wrote that scene in chapter 5, then I need to come back to that because it might seem minor but it builds up the character. So in chapter 10 I need to have a conversation about something that happened in chapter 5 and blah 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 blah. You see, I was going back and forth in my mind, not so much in physical form because dull blind. I was very methodic where I was going to put the pieces of the puzzle for this particular book, and I said, well, I will focus on book 2 and 3 once I'm done with this one. So that's how I did it. Lots of thinking, lots of planning. It took me 2 months of writing an outline and 5 months of drafting. I think everyone can do this, hopefully. So, how do you plot your novels if you do it in multi-POV? Am I missing something? Because this is a journal, but also if people want to comment, great. I appreciate every answer to the transmissions. At the beginning I was not expecting them, but now that I see that they are coming, well, how do you plot your own novels? Do you plot your novels? As I know there are some people who don't. If you don't and you have written a multi-POV, how do you do that? And how do you fix it later if you need to fix it later? How well do you know story structure? Goodness, maybe that's where I'm missing and failing, because maybe I don't know story structure that well. Who knows? As always, thank you so much for listening and for being here.